What's up guys, this is Josh back with another video, and welcome to my tutorial on managing the UFW Firewall in Ubuntu 22.04 server. In this video, we'll start with the basics and explain what UFW Firewall is and why it's important. Now, just to break everything down, firewalls are an essential part of any computer system security. They basically act as a barrier between your computer and the internet, and it's blocking unwanted traffic and protecting your system from attack. Now, UFW, which stands for Uncomplicated Firewall, is a user-friendly command line tool that makes it easy to manage firewall rules in Ubuntu. So let me give you a little bit more on why it's important to understand how to use the firewall. Well, within a firewall, your system is vulnerable to various types of attacks, such as port scanning, denial of service attacks, and even hacking attempts. And a firewall can prevent these attacks by blocking unwanted traffic and allowing only authorized traffic to pass through. Now, UFW is a great option, especially on a Linux operating system, because it sits on top of the actual firewall, which is called IP tables. But UFW has a simple syntax and it's a straightforward command line interface, making it easy to understand and use. In addition, UFW actually comes pre-installed on Ubuntu servers, so you don't need to install it or any other additional software to start using it. Now that you understand what UFW Firewall is and why it's important, let's move on to the next step, which is getting it set up and showing you guys how to use some of the commands. Before we move forward, I wanted to give a quick shout out to CIQ, the official partner of Rocky Linux. Rocky Linux is a Linux distribution that is intended to be a downstream complete binary compatible release using the Red Hat Enterprise Linux operating system source code. The project is led by Gregory Kurtzer, who was the founder of the CentOS project. So check out Rocky Linux at ciq.co. Alright, so let's get started. And the first thing I wanted to show you guys that I'm logged into Ubuntu 22.04 via SSH. And SSH is an application that allows you to remotely connect to a server. And this is a virtual machine within Proxmox. And as I stated, this is a server, so there is no graphical interface for you to see, and everything is done from the command line. Now let's go down and look at the firewall. And as I stated in the intro, that Ubuntu comes with UFW installed. And the first thing I like to show people is the man page for the application I want to teach you guys. So UFW, let's press enter, and essentially what the man page is, a document that you can open up from the command line, basically called the manual. And so depending on the application that you're using, it'll show the manual for that application that you specify. So all I did was type man and then UFW. That'll open up the manual. And most applications have a man page or manual to give you some information about the application itself. And just to follow up a little more, it says UFW, a program for managing net filter firewall. And so this program is for managing the Linux firewall and aims to provide an easy to use interface for users. And that's 100% true. It's 100% easier than managing the firewall using IP tables. And if you scroll up and down under usage, it kind of gives you an outline of how to run the commands, which I'll go through a few of them, just showing you guys that. But let's go down and quit right fast, because I want to go down and show you guys a simple command right fast. And the first thing I wanted to show you guys was the version. So we could type UFW and then version. That'll give us the version of UFW, which it is 0.36.1. Now the next thing I want to show you guys is how to actually turn on the firewall. And one thing with that, we have to go down and open up ports, because currently the firewall is turned off, and that's done by default. So whenever you install a Ubuntu server, the firewall is not turned on. And right now I'm SSH'd into the server, And in order to keep my connection, I need to open up those ports for SSH, which is port 22, in order to keep my connection live with the server. And so let me show you guys UFW status. And this is one of the main commands I want to show you guys with UFW. You just want to verify the status of it. And this will show information based on if the firewall is turned on, because like right now when I run it, and of course you got to run it as sudo, because whenever you're making changes to the firewall, it requires you to run those commands as sudo. But as you can see, the status of the firewall is inactive. And so let's go down and open up port 22, and that'll be the next command I wanted to show you guys. So all we have to do is type sudo and then UFW. And before I do it, I want to show you guys this list as well. You can, whatever is installed in your system will be listed as an application that you're going to open up within the firewall. And it all depends on the type of application it is. If it's an application that needs ports open for it, then it'll be listed under the app list. So let's go down and press enter there, and I'll show you guys the available applications is open SSH, and that's the exact port that we want to open up because that's the only application that's installed on here. Now let's say you install a web server, so that requires port 80 to be open, as well as 443. So you can open up those apps, and those apps will be listed there as well. So let's go down and let's open up the ports for SSH. So all we have to do is type sudo UFW and then allow, and then all we have to do is type it exactly like in the available application. So capital O PEN and then capital SSH, and press enter, and that'll add those rules to the firewall. So port 22 will be open. So now let me show you guys how to activate the actual firewall. And we have to run sudo. So sudo UFW and then enable, and that will enable the firewall and turn it on, activate it. And so every time you reboot the system, the firewall will come up. So let's press enter, and then right there is a warning, and this is just to verify that you did open up your port 22, because it sees that I'm connected to the server via SSH. It says command may disrupt existing SSH connection, so proceed with the operation. You type Y, and you want to make sure you open up that port first, otherwise you lose access to the system. So type Y, press enter, it'll go down and activate the firewall. And then now we can run that status command, and we can get some information about the system or the firewall now. So if we type sudo UFW status, press enter, that'll give us the ports that are open, as well as show us the status of the server. So boom. And so open SSH, like I said, that's port 22, so that'll allow connections via port 22 for SSH. Now let's go down and install Apache. And I'll just run through that right fast, and I'll skip through it, but I'll show you guys how to install it. But sudo apt install Apache, and I believe the package is 2, so Apache 2. Let's press enter, go through that. We'll go through that install, and I'll be back when this finishes. Okay, so boom, the Apache server is up and running. Now let's get back to UFW, and I wanted to show you guys the firewall in action. That's why I wanted to go down and install Apache after we activated the firewall. And so once you get Apache installed, it will now store a host in our website. So it automatically activates the Apache server, and we can check that by typing sudo systemctl and then status, and then we can check out Apache 2 and press enter, and boom, and you can see that it's enabled and active and running. So let's go down and quit that, and first let's go down and grab our IP address, because that's how you get to the web server, you know, from the outside, at least within my internal network, because right now this thing is not, you know, being pushed through my router, so it has access to the internet, so to speak, as far as a website being hosted. But you should be able to go to the IP address on the internal network or the same network using the IP address. And so what I'm gonna do is copy it, I'm gonna copy that IP address, and what I ran was IPA. That'll give us the IP address for each device on the system. As you can see, this is my internal, so 192.168.10.139. And then let's switch over to my web browser and just paste that in and go. And as you can see, we cannot get to the website. It just kind of times out, or it sits there and spins. It doesn't even really move or anything. So let's go back to the terminal, and then we'll switch back as soon as we activate that port or open up that port. And so let's run the command sudo UFW and then the app list. Let's check out the list right fast. And like I said, it'll show you the available applications as you install applications. So as you can see, Apache is there now. So this is an available application for UFW to manage the ports. And I'll just go on and do the Apache one, and I don't want to break this down. I just did a video showing you guys how to set up Apache. Make sure you check out that video if you need help understanding Apache. But they have 2 different or 3 different profiles, and they open different ports depending on which one it is. And I'll just briefly say it, but Apache opens up port 80 only. Apache Full opens up 80 and 443, and then Apache Secure opens up the secure port, which is 443. So what I'm gonna do is just run the Apache one. So we can run sudo UFW allow, and then we have to type it exactly like it's there. And since it has a space in between, I'm gonna just do full, but since it has a space in between it, you have to put it in quotes, because with Linux, and this is a command line thing, with Linux, when you type something and it has a space in it or whatever, you sometimes have to put it in quotes. Otherwise, it'll recognize it as a different command or something different. Like I said, you have to type it exactly. So Apache with the capital A, space, full with the capital F, and then put it in, close the quotes, and then press enter, and I'll open up that rule. And then also we could check that status right fast. So sudo UFW and then status, and press enter, and boom, as you can see, Apache, those ports are open. I wish I had my website open or my web browser open so you guys can see, but it popped up with the page right after I activated it. So that shows you in real time how the firewall works. If you don't have those ports open, then you can't get to this port, you know, that's assigned to whatever application that you're trying to connect to, which in this case is Apache, and this is that server right there. I just opened up that port with that IP address, so 139. Now the next thing I want to do is show you guys how to disable the firewall, because you definitely want to know how to do that in case you need to disable it for whatever reason. So sudo UFW and then disable, and this will disable the firewall. That's the command, and I'll go down and do it right fast so you guys can see. But it'll go through firewall stopped and disabled on system startup, so it won't even start up anymore. So that's essentially square one when we first booted up our Ubuntu server. Now let me go down and start it back up right fast. So let's type sudo UFW and enable, and press enter, and yes, boom. And so our firewall is back active. Now let me show you guys how to disable an actual application. And what we did was we did the application full. And let's go down and list out our applications again. So, well, actually, let's list out the status. So our open port, so UFW and then status. And this will give us the applications that are open. And what I want to do is remove the Apache full. So if we press, I'm gonna just copy it right fast. And also, just so you guys know, when you do open up the ports, when you just put them in there like that, as far as like opening up an application or allowing connections for an application, it'll do the version 6 as well. So IP version 6 as well as IP version 4. It'll do both of them. But in order to, let's say we want to delete the Apache full, let's go sudo UFW and then delete, allow, and you have to specify the action that it does. So allow, and then we have to put it in quotes again, and we can paste that in there since I copied it right fast, and then put the close quotes and press enter, and that'll delete that rule for you. And as you can see, it removed the Apache version 6. And if we go back to our web browser, and let's say we try to connect back to this site, as you can see, it'll just spin where you can't really see it because I have the top cut off, but it's basically spinning. It's not connecting to this site at all because the rules are blocked. And then let's go down and go back to the status right fast, and as you can see, that rule has been deleted. Now let's go down and allow connections back to that right fast. So sudo UFW and then allow, and then Apache full, boom, and then press enter. That'll add that rule back. We can check the status again, and boom. Now one thing you can do with the firewall is block IP addresses, and it's crazy. You could do a whole lot. You could block IP addresses, you could block subnet masks, you know, by the subnet, as long as you know the subnet or the CIDR, and that'll block a full subnet of addresses from connecting to your server. And the scenario, I would say, let's say you have a server and you only want a certain people within your organization to connect to this server, like and they have a block of IP addresses on a certain subnet within your network. Well, you can deny access to the others on the network, or the other IP addresses under different subnet masks within your organization. So it's a cool way of actually doing that. But you can go through and block, let's say I'm gonna just use a random IP address just to come up with something. And so let's switch back to our terminal and go on and deny this random IP address I found, and I went on and copied it. And the command to do it is sudo UFW and then deny from a specific IP address. So let's put this in there. Boom, that's an IP address that I randomly got off a calculator, just to get something, you know, that's realistic so you guys can see. But you put the IP address in there, press enter, and then let's go to the status again and check out the status. Now, as you can see, you got to deny from anywhere this IP address. So that's how you do it. You know, it's very simple. And then it's the exact same way to remove it, like we removed the Apache full allow. So basically sudo UFW, and what we have to do is type the action. So this one denies, and then that IP address, I'm gonna delete that off. I'm just going through the recent commands just so you guys can kind of see the difference in the syntax and how it follows. So all we have to do is go through, delete that, deny, could not delete non-existing rule, which is weird. And let's check the status again. That's weird. And sometimes I run into this issue, and one way I get around it is by running the status, but I run it using the numbered option. And so numbered, when you type numbered at the end of it, it'll number each one of the rules that you have set. And this is an easy way to delete stuff as well. So I'm glad this popped up so I can show you guys that. So let's go down and press enter, and as you can see, it puts another column in here, but it's a number in front of it. And let's say we want to delete rule 3. So all we have to do is type sudo UFW delete, and then we can do number 3 and press enter. Boom, it'll go and delete that deny from, and you have to type Y to proceed, like confirmation, press enter. That will delete that rule out. So that's an easier way of doing it. I'm not sure why. Maybe I typed this in wrong, or maybe I misspelled something, not 100% sure, but anyway, I was able to remove it that way. So that's another way to remove rules, and you could do that, you know, for any of them. So exactly like we did with the Apache, we could, if let's say we only want to get rid of the version 6 rule, because we don't want anyone connecting using a version 6 IP address, we could delete that by just typing 4. Sudo UFW delete 4. Now let me show you guys how to block a subnet. So let's say you find an IP address, you want to block the full subnet, you know exactly what it is based on logs or something to that effect. Then you can type in that same command that we typed earlier, and I'm just going through them so you guys can see. So sudo UFW deny from that IP address, as well as our CIDR. And from the IP address I calculated, which it only has one host, but if you want to block out that whole CIDR, all you have to do is type the CIDR at the end of it, or subnet mask at the end of it, and press enter. That'll go on deny that full subnet. So that's how you actually, get it going. And if you guys understand networking, that is the broadcast address, and so you want to use that as well as the subnet mask, and it'll block out that whole range of IPs. Which, like I said, when you go to the calculator and you look at this IP address, the way I have it set up, I think I have it set up as a C, network class of C. It only has one host, so that's really not a good example. But if you could do the exact same thing for any other IP address, you could block out that whole subnet mask. So that's it for the tutorial on managing the UFW firewall in Ubuntu 22.04 server. And I hope you found this video helpful and informative. And to recap, we covered the basics of the UFW firewall, including what it is and why it's important. We also walk you through a few examples of using UFW on Ubuntu 22.04. Now remember, managing your server's firewall is very critical for keeping your system secure from attacks and unauthorized access. And by using the UFW firewall, you can easily set this up and manage firewall rules on your Ubuntu server. Now, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more Linux tutorials like this. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and of course, keep it techie.